Three, well, I would say brief remarks. The first one is I do agree with everything that has been said concerning the causes and threats of insecurity in Europe. Has been said by President Adler, by our colleague from Latvia, from Malta, from Poland, quite a list of economic, social, political, and geostrategic causes and threats. I just point out that we're facing also a change in terrorism, because there is an interconnection, that's my point of view, between terrorism in the east of Europe, in the neighboring eastern regions of Europe, Northern Africa, and the rest of Africa. For the first time, we're seeing it in Central Africa and even in Southern Africa, appearing movements, apparently inorganic, but connected with former terrorist groups, mostly Daesh, that had not only an organizational structure, but also a kind of territorial presence. Then I do agree fully with what Frank Walter has said concerning the change for the last 4 years in the international ambiance. We no longer have a bipolar world, no longer a monopolar world. We have a mixture of a multipolar world and the beginning of a new bipolar world. It depends upon us also, the outcome of this transition. Starting with China. In China we have economic expansion, filling the gap left by Americans and Europeans, in most cases, in Europe, in Africa, Latin America, and in Asia, mostly in Asia. But at the same time, military expression, and that's different. We do not know whether it's already the second military power, nobody knows, but it could easily turn out to be, because it has economic sustainable power to have it, which is not the case of Russian Federation. Then we have Russian Federation, a conversion from global power into regional power, but a strong regional power, enlarging its region, going on being apparently the second military power, but hardly having economic structure to sustain it for decades. Enlarging its influence in the neighboring regions, Eastern Europe, Middle East, Near East, Northern Africa, a little bit of Central Africa, with a strong cyber presence and a strong geostrategic presence, even in the functioning of the political reality in Europe. Very much attentive to it. And then we have the United States, our really main key ally. And I do agree with all of us, all of you, because it is irreplaceable. It is the key ally, as NATO is replaceable by any European initiative. And it's easy to understand the case of the United States, first of all, a kind of a secular war between the West and Asia on the future economic center of the world. Will it be as it was before the Industrial Revolution in Asia? Will it go on being as it is since the Industrial Revolution? It was first in Britain and then in the United States. Will it turn out to be Asian? And I speak of Asian, China, but also India, and also Japan, and who knows, Korea. We do understand that, so China is very much a subject of attention for the United States of America. We do understand we must have to pay the burden, which is not a burden, it's something that is fair, concerning NATO and the military expenditure, one of the points of the American position for the last couple of years. We do understand that, in a way, little by little, the new generations, the new political class generations in the United States are becoming far away from Europe, not knowing Europe as well as it used to happen before. This is happening. We must, of course, go on making a kind of effort to try to develop these kind of ties and links. And finally, we do understand that electoral campaigns in the United States mean that for several years, 2 years, the primaries and then the election, the speech, the public speech is very much influenced by this campaigning. We want the United States very much to go on being a strong European ally. So that's why we wish always a very clear position from the United States concerning Russian Federation. We wish a solidarity with Europe, and mostly with European countries that are in the regions neighboring that neighbor, solidarity coming from the United States. We wish that when we are in coalitions in regions neighboring Europe, no unilateral decisions are taken without a common pre-assessment with Europeans. Because Afghanistan, as Syria, are too close to Europe, but very important for the world. And we do wish that no repetition of the Brexit and the way some American sectors showed the happiness with the Brexit, or no repetition of a certain sympathy towards movements and cleavages that really weaken Europe. This said, of course, a common position towards Russia and towards China, a common European position is vital. Is vital. Otherwise, there will be no European Union as a global actor. We'll have a sum of different actors, weak actors, even if they are at the regional level very strong, they won't be strong enough at the global level. And finally, just a word on the values, as our Irish president pointed out. The reason why security is important for us is not the fact that we don't like China, we don't like Russia, we don't like the fact that another power that is not our ally in the past, in the present, in the future, is becoming more powerful. Because we fight for values. Security is not an end on itself. Security is a means to make our values important in the world. When we do try to explain them to Latin America or to Asian countries, to African countries, it's because we believe on those values. We believe that these values are very important. Our vision of the world, our vision of the person, of the dignity of the person, of the human rights, of democracy, of pluralism, of multilateralism. We believe they are important for the world. Otherwise, why should we prefer a dictatorship instead of another one? Just for the fact of being friendly. We know how are those the dictatorships. They're friendly for a while, and in the next decade, they change their partner. I saw in Beijing the way the former Soviet republics were paying a tribute to China. They were no longer paying to Russia. And they formed a single state 30 years ago, 40 years ago. That's changed. So in a sense, I do agree with President Higgins when he said, of course, the security speech is very important, but it must be a hope speech also, not just a fear speech. Must be also a speech for freedom and for peace and for peace. A Mozambican poet has a sentence, it's not a Portuguese one, but almost Portuguese, that says, too many powers today, too many political and economic powers, fear to lose the argument of fear. Because it is really a good argument today. It's the fashion today. To be afraid of. We live in a world where we are afraid of the neighbor. We're afraid of the different. We're afraid of someone else's idea that is not ours. This kind of speech is a weak speech. It won't last. Nobody fights just for fear. One fights for sovereignty, one fights for an ideal. And if we want to fight for Europe, for our countries, of course, but for Europe, we must believe in Europe. And we must show we believe in Europe all over the world. And that Europe is really a strong player. Because if we do not believe in Europe, if we ask too many questions without giving enough answers, the rest of the world will start asking itself, but do they believe in their union for long? Will it last? Or will it little by little start vanishing, being just a group of regional powers? I think the advantage and the aim of this Arraiolos group and summit that was formed with non-executive presidents, that little by little are becoming executive in several countries, which is funny, because one thing is the Constitution, the other thing is the constitutional reality. And the political influence sometimes goes beyond the Constitution. But the important thing is that it's an open space of debate, but also of deepening of our European faith. That's why we did agree, all of us, with so many points, different points from everyone. And that's very good. It's a good sign for our co-citizens.